Alright, sorry about that, folks. Little problem with the OBS software, but I think we're back on it. Okay.
All right.
Picking up where we left off.
So what I'm saying is that when it comes to like Mission Impossible, is that we don't know. Like in the very first film, obviously he's a younger guy, and we don't know how long he's necessarily been in the IMF. It was a much bigger organization at that point, and I think maybe at its height was maybe like 3, but going from 4 on, the scope of how big the IMF was cut down and down and down.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, we don't know how Ethan got into the IMF, and it's very possible that the idea that he was kind of a ruffian, if you will, and was offered the choice, and he was a scrap that was picked up because there was that they saw in him to bring him in.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really see it as a contradiction or like it's retconning anything.
Okay, I get it. Yeah.
Yeah,
To see it, yeah, I understand. Like what you mean, it's like it's a this and that. Yes, because the first 3 movies, the IMF was much more established. It's probably like one of the big, like, I mean, if we're counting the NSA, one of the big 4 intelligence agencies, in the federal government. But after Ghost Protocol, it just the agency kept getting like cleaved, to the point where it's basically just like Ethan Hunt now. And his and the handful of people like on his team and stuff.
Right, and that's like I said, this is coming from a guy who has seen all of the movies at least 20 times at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I've watched them all. Like, every once in a while I'll do like I'll marathon the Mission Impossible movies.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, that's what I'm like saying, like it's more of a this and that. I don't really see it as a retcon of anything.
Okay. So, because if the way Ethan was recruited stands up in the latest movie, which made it seem like he had, he was a pickpocketer, he was a confidence man, and then something like a love interest was murdered by Essie Morales' character.
Yeah.
Which then put him in a situation where the IMF approached him and offered him the choice of either joining the organization or not. And to which he accepted, and he became an exemplary agent. But then also, like, he could have also been a training officer at their academy. Eventually, noticing Carrie Russell character's potential and mentoring her. But then, with the events of the interim between 3 and 4, which is Ghost Protocol, with his wife Julia, he then goes into deep cover. And with the events of Ghost Protocol, the organization is, essentially disavowed, so like no longer exists. But then is revitalized through Ethan's effort, but then is cleaved again after the wake of Fallout.
Yeah.
Or Rogue Nation, I should say.
With Rogue Nation,
and then again cleaved again after. Particularly, especially since Alec Baldwin's character of the secretary of the IMF is killed.
Yeah.
Um,
So they have no secretary. They have a few of the remaining IMF members left, and a guy, shit, what the fuck is his name in the show or in the movie? He was in the first one.
oh, Luther.
But like it's like
Luther.
no. I'm talking about like the
Oh yeah. That guy. I mean, I don't know what. Yeah, like where the hell has he been? But I get,
well,
I get it. They're bringing old people back for the finale and stuff. But like, why isn't he the secretary?
but because he's not in the organization. He was never in the IMF to begin with. He was part of like I think he's in the CIA or NSA or something like that.
Huh.
So you have what was his character's name? Hold on a second. Henry Zerny.
Kittredge.
Yeah. Carrie Ellis is in this fucking movie. I forgot about that.
Oh yeah, he play. Yeah, he's the what is it? Director of National Security.
Yeah. I forgot. I was like, oh yeah, that's right. It's Carrie Elwes.
It's Wesley.
But yeah, no. So Kittredge was always part of a different organization, and because I think like the IMF isn't like necessarily independent of itself. It does work with other intelligence agencies when it needs them, and that's like the entire IMF team is killed. He calls in, and see Kittredge is the one that calls him in, and he realized like he is part of the conspiracy to get the knock list and all that stuff. And then now that the IMF has been essentially pared down to like just a number of people, it's more of like the idea of like, well, we just leave. The Kittredge is talking about us like, oh, we just leave word. You leave word with like this phantom organization that, and then you just you expect someone to get it done. It's always worked before. So
it says here he was the former secretary of the Impossible Mission Force.
Well, yeah, because he wasn't. The thing is, he wasn't the secretary in the first one.
Right. Oh, it says he is a former director of the Impossible Mission Force.
I wonder if that goes back to the show. I haven't watched the show.
Right.
I'd be curious to check. I might have to watch the show. But yeah, I just I don't know, man. I think that's like I said, I want to get the last one out, and then let it be done. Same thing with like all the stuff that's been coming out, like Scream 7, with all the shit that's been going on behind the scenes there. It's like, let this be the idea. Like, let it just kind of die out. Let the 6 movies be there. The 6th one was good, but I think it's just like, let's not run this fucking thing into the ground. Just let it go. It's over. Let Dead Reckoning Part 2 come out. Let that, kind of finish off the saga. Let's finish up the story that we left off in Dead Reckoning Part 1. And let Hollywood change forever at that point.
Yeah. I mean, in a lot of ways, it's very much like farming cycles where, you plant a certain crop on one field and you use that field to a certain point, and then it's time to shift over to a different piece of land, and then you start growing on that, and you allow that other field to rejuvenate itself.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. To use a farming metaphor.
Yeah.
But one of my heroes used farming metaphors too. But yeah, this is a natural cycle. You have like your big blockbuster franchise things. You have like your overwrought genre movies or genre franchises, and then it suddenly cuts back and more character driven stories are able to be told, and and I think I can speak for Rob. I'm looking forward to those times.
Yeah, I because we're gonna get some good stuff out of that. Like I think like what especially like in the late '60s, early '70s, we got some really great films. In the '90s, we got some really great films as well, and I think we're kind of lacking in that right now. We're getting a few of them still, but like we're not getting like the I don't feel like we're getting a lot of the same stuff. And I'm looking forward to us getting better writing is what we need. Is like we need to actually have good writing out there.
Well, hopefully with the writer strike, this allowed studios to do some house cleaning,
Yeah, I
particularly
hope so.
particularly with some of their writers.
They all need to go to the Roger Corman school of like, listen, you can have your whatever message bent that you want, your political bent, but don't
Right,
sacrifice.
not at the expense of the story.
Yeah, it's about entertainment. The message is second is should never be the top reason you're making a movie. Make a movie to entertain people, and if you have a message, find a way to entertain. You'll win more people that way.
Exactly. All right.
Mhm.
Okay, nothing else to add to that?
No, I got nothing else to add to that. I
Yeah.
was just it's kind of something that's been on my mind the last few weeks, and I've been looking at the box office numbers recently. It's like it's not looking good for some of these
Oh
big
yeah, I mean,
studios.
yeah, I mean, with the failures of the Flash movie, and then
Oh my god,
also just most recently the Marvels,
the
and
Marvels
yeah,
looks like
and even just like on the small screen with Marvels, what is it? The Samuel Jackson led one. What was it called? Invasion or something?
oh the him as like Nick Fury.
Yeah,
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 Secret Invasion. I heard that was not great.
yeah. But also,
Which
if
is
you also take into totality, Disney's, if you take into totality Disney's property, their bomb of a animated movie, Wish.
I've heard, yeah, I heard it's like really bad.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, that's like 4 or 5 flops for Disney.
They've had, which is unusual for them,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also
Oh yeah, Little
because
Mermaid too, the live action one. That's what
that movie looks like it looked like such crap. Oh my god, it's like I don't know what the fuck they're thinking. Like it just this is so bad. Nobody wants this stuff.
yeah.
No one's clamoring for like, oh, we need a semi live action adaptation of Little Mermaid. It's like, no, we don't.
Yeah,
It's not.
or you don't need live actions that humanize the villain of your movies. A la, Maleficent or the Cruella de Vil live action one that they did to try to make her more humanize her.
Maleficent, I will say, is not terrible,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, outside of that, like, God, they're really like not
I know,
good.
it's all and I really think it's because the villains were women. Like they felt like, oh, the woman can't be a bad guy. So we have to soften her up. We have to explain why she's the way she is. So she's
Um,
so people understand. It's like, oh, it's not her fault. The circumstances. Society.
I I know why they're evil. It's because of their period. Am I right,
There you
guys?
go.
Am
Am I
I right?
right? Am I right, fellas? Am I right? funny because it's true. Anyways, let's get on to the next topic for discussion.
Speaking of periods.
Speaking of periods, yeah. Rob had a really interesting, I guess, philosophical question he wanted to ask or present.
Yeah, well, so one of the things that obviously is a big topic of discussion is, human trafficking. One, it's something that is happening. I know, like, a lot of people want to deny it, and so human trafficking is it's slavery is what's going on. You're moving. I mean, because that's when you bring up the word slavery, we're obviously thinking about like one type of slavery, and that's like what we had in the Atlantic slave trade, which is chattel slavery. That's what comes to mind. And which is essentially, it was essentially human trafficking. You were taking people from one place and moving them to another place for money to serve in whatever. That's kind of like what's been going on now in like the sex trade and stuff like that, or in the what people don't realize is the Arabic slave trade, which has been going on for several thousand years at this point. It's been going on for a long ass time. But something that like was brought to my mind that I thought was kind of interesting, and it's another. Is there consent? Yeah. Is there yeah, I mean, outside of like consent, like, there's a lot of like just weird things about it. So you have essentially most of the people that are utilizing this are gay and lesbian couples, as far as like, because obviously they cannot reproduce, so they are, through the quote unquote miracle of science, essentially renting out a womb of a woman, utilizing their DNA with another egg, being injected in a person's womb, so that they can, quote unquote, and it's like they're. I just feel you're using two different people that have connection with you whatsoever to create a child that will never really know its origin. And man, yeah, you get a lot of hands, a lot of people involved in it. It feels a little icky. Yeah, it does have elements to it. Someone's consenting, sure. At what point, the type of human trafficking, money's changing hands. You are essentially using these for whatever your place. And yeah, especially because when there are many children that are needing to be, were already born, and unfortunately were abandoned by their family reason, death or whatever, and yet you're wanting to spend money just to make this crazy thing happen. And I'm wondering, like, I don't know what you think about this, Andy, but like, do you kind of think of this as like another some sort of human trafficking?
Yeah, I
agree here. I'm just wanted to get your thoughts.
Yeah, I thought about this question, not regularly, but it has crossed my mind. I mean, even to the point where, I would, in some ways, regard even even like girls who go, who travel, like, from like LA or like, the surrounding states around Las Vegas, like those girls who travel to Las Vegas, for the weekend and make, money. In a way, I would regard that as trafficking as well. But yeah, there is just something not clean about this whole, like, surrogacy thing, or even just like, you know basically calling dibs on babies for homosexual couples. I mean, if, like, regardless of the consent, you're ostensibly still, purchasing something. You're exchanging money for a life. Um, and depending on your means, you're paying for the hospital bills. You're paying for um, you're paying for the travel to, either for them to for the carrier to come to you, or for you to go to the carrier, so that you can be part of the experience of birth. um, I don't know if I've come down on a side yet, but I will say that it's very murky, and um, generally speaking, if something's murky, I won't call it good, but I won't necessarily call it evil. I won't call it evil either until there's a clarifying point to the topic.
Yeah, like I think you're right. It is definitely very murky. That doesn't necessarily make it evil. Um, it's not evil like what kids being like kidnapped for like sex slavery or something
Something
crazy like
more
that.
like
That
clean, like
that's a whole
clearly defined.
yeah. This is more of like because you have a bunch of people who are consenting to do this, and that doesn't necessarily mean that consent makes it like
Exactly.
okay per se, but it's kind of like it is a weird situation. Um, I mean, surrogacy has been going on since nearly the beginning of time. I mean, how many stories in the Bible do we read about, like with um, surrogacy tales, essentially? It's like where people have had children through other women because like their wives couldn't get pregnant. Not as
Well, I mean, yeah, like kind of like a biblical situation with Jacob and Jacob, Rebecca, and Leah. What was it?
yeah,
Rebecca's womb was closed. But Leah's was closed. But for some reason, she wasn't able to give um, Jacob children, so she gave Jacob one of her servant girls, and through, I
yeah.
guess, in a kind of surrogacy, she had the servant girl had a child with Jacob. Uh,
Which at the time legally is like it was okay. That
permissible.
was that was uh, that was permissible, which is crazy to think about. But like in a sense, like that's kind of what's going on today. Like legally, what's happening is okay. We have science that's able to make that happen. It's not like how it was done necessarily in the days
Right.
of Jacob, where where he was essentially like having sex with that servant girl to have children. But this is done through like a essentially a test tube and like kind of all sorts of like
Right.
stuff there.
Yeah.
But man, it just feels it's uncomfortable. I'll just say that. Like I think we'll look back on this in 100 years, and it's like, what the fuck were you guys doing?
Right.
Yeah, it feels real weird.
Right. It's interesting.
Just because like
Yeah, because what is that? One of my favorite thought leaders, Owen Benjamin. He put up a post on Instagram addressing this thing. From the framework of Dave Rubin. Those of you not familiar, Dave Rubin.
he's
Yeah,
doing
he's doing
the
the same
same thing.
thing.
Like Ruben is doing the same
And
thing.
of course, Owen Benjamin doesn't agree with. He doesn't necessarily agree with what Dave Rubin has done, but in no way is he saying that his like the children should then be taken away from him and his partner.
No, no, I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
agree with
So,
that.
but he's just, but I think Owen's point is that that it shouldn't be normalized. That
No,
that
I
this sort
that
of
that
like patchwork family stuff shouldn't be normalized.
well that's the idea is like it's when anytime like when the actual like nuclear family is broken up for whatever reason, like that's not like what the norm is supposed to be. That doesn't mean that it's like evil or anything like that. That don't get me wrong. There's it's like whether it be through like death or divorce or whatever. It's like the kids that are involved in this. It's not their fault per se. Like it's not like we and that doesn't mean like that their families are evil because you had this or that. Um, and in these cases, no, I don't think the kid should be taken away from them. I'm just saying that with there's so many like infants that are needing adoption. It just you're looking at just infants alone, not just like not looking at like older children, infants alone that need adoption, and yet we're going through this other complicated way that is probably more expensive. I don't know. Maybe the prices have changed, but it feels like this is way more expensive than adoption.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, because kind of like abandoned babies, they're at least alive, as opposed to going
Yeah,
this and I don't mean this with any particular malice or negativity, but going like this unnatural way of creating a family, where you're getting an egg from one person, mixing it with I don't even know if it was necessarily, well, in the specific case of Dave Rubin, I don't even know if it's like his genetic material that was joined with a woman's egg, or if it was like another person's genetic material creating a baby and then taking those embryos and putting them into a different woman. It's just so this like this convoluted unnatural process of creating a family that you know I don't agree with, but I wouldn't. But I'm not saying that we should take the again, yeah, not agreeing with the idea that we should take children away from gay couples. Just not. I'm just for not normalizing it.
yeah. I think that's a kind of where I lie on the issue.
Right? And I mean, it's like because a lot of times people will be like, oh, well, you're traditional, and you think, and a lot of traditional people say that you're supposed to have a family and blah blah blah. It's like, yeah, if you're able to, if that is within,
That's not
yeah,
always
if that's within,
possible.
and because I'm a spiritual person. Like, if that's what's within God's will, like, I mean, yeah, you have certain cases where people took matters into their own hands. I mean, Allah, even Abraham and Sarah. Sarah wasn't able to conceive, and they were kind of even though that God promised them an heir, they got impatient, and Sarah's like, "I'll just take one of my slave girls."
And we're
And we're
still
still,
dealing
we're
with that
still, yeah,
problem.
all because of a woman. Um, I'm joking, of course, but yeah, like they went about the unnatural way, and and they, and they, what is it? They lost faith in God's word. God's word said, like, you will be the father of many nations. And year after year, still no baby, still no baby. And they're like, you know what, we're just, God, I know you promised us, but we got this, got this. And a Hagar, you know,
Yeah.
um, just anything that goes, against, so, if you can, if you're able, and and if you're the believing sort, if it's God's will, then you'll have a child, despite your, best efforts. God will do what He will do. And
Ian Malcolm, like in the wisdom of Ian Malcolm,
right.
life finds a way.
So, so, so yeah, yeah, the whole process is so convoluted and unnatural that, yeah, I'm not for it. I wouldn't, like, even if it were a hetero couple, right? And for some reason the woman wasn't able to conceive, and then they got a surrogate, and they did, they created embryo. I don't want to give away too. I don't want to. I'm not gonna give out any names, but yeah, I know a couple who went the, in vitro route, and
Yeah.
they had a baby, but they still have an embryo left over. And right now, yeah,
Yeah.
right now that embryo is in limbo. I mean, I still think it's a person. Don't get me wrong. It's a person. It's
Yeah.
their child. It's not just their embryo. It's not just their genetic material. It's their child, right? And
Yeah.
they've shared with me that they don't know what to do with it, or you know, um, and a lot of options came up, and I advised them, hey, like, I know it may not have fit into your plans, about about how many children that you're intending to have, but I think you should have this baby, or you should at the very least attempt to have this baby, because it is your baby, it's your child. And you when you went the route of you know uh, creating that child, you took on the responsibility of it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I think, like, and maybe the baby doesn't cling, and it just miscarries. That is a tragedy. It really is.
Yeah.
But at least it was, you made the attempt to have that child, or you attempted to bring that child into this world.
Not put them in like
Right.
cryostasis.
Right. Leaving your child in, like, limbo. So of course,
Yeah.
I advocated for them to to make the attempt.
It's it's just a weird situation. It was something that someone I saw had brought up, and I was like, that's an interesting question.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and yeah, like I said, I'll be honest, I don't know. And like I said, I'm not. You and I are not like tradcon type guys either.
Right.
We're,
Yeah. I mean, we got dirt on us.
yeah, and like I said, I'm not trying to legislate or knock anyone for whatever their lifestyle is, but man, this just feels so weird.
Right. I mean, just as we would marvel at someone with two heads, to
Yeah,
one body. This is the same thing. You know, it's unnatural. I mean, that doesn't make it bad. It's just unnatural.
Yeah,
And so,
exactly.
you know, when and so it's, you know, kind of hard to morally categorize these things. You know, I'm not saying that these people should be, you know, prosecuted, um, or forbidden from even attempting, but like again, like just for like a heterosexual company or couple who have problems
This
conceiving.
for anybody trying to attempt
Yeah,
this.
exactly.
Like I said, yeah, obviously the people who I've seen do this have been, it's been a majority of like, kind of gay and lesbian couples who have done
Mm-hmm.
this. That's it's not an indictment against them, because I know that there are hetero couples who have probably attempted this as well. I mean, that's kind of the whole fucking point of Juno, isn't it? Um, the movie Juno with Ellen Page,
Right. I'm from.
and yes,
Yeah, I'm familiar with the movie. I never watched it, but essentially, yeah, like, you know, this girl gets knocked up by her boyfriend. She's in, you know, she's in high school, and she decides to give the baby up for adoption.
yeah, it's kind of like, but it wasn't like, they the couple that's adopting the baby. It's like, well, we can't quite get pregnant on our own, so we're gonna use your womb to give birth to our baby. And it's like, that would have been a really weird. Well, at that time, it would have been kind of like weird to have a film that deals with that,
Right.
but it's kind of yeah, it's just weird, man. I don't like it for anybody. I feel very uncomfortable with it.
Indeed.
But yeah, I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. I thought it was kind of an interesting, it was a question that was posed, or a point that was posed, and I was like, that's, what? Let's explore that a little bit.
Okay. Well, I mean, really quickly, in that kind of in the same vein, again, one of, my favorite, thought leader, Owen Benjamin, he put out a series of tweets, um, kind of talking about abortion, and then, um, and well, particularly because of, how high the abortion rate is in, the black community. I mean, in New York City, a black baby has a 50-50 chance of being born or aborted. So literally,
Yeah, it's
the
crazy.
odds of a black baby in New York City is a flip of a coin.
That's
And
crazy.
so, Owen, I really enjoy like his thought process and like the way he breaks down ideas. And one of them was, this, because he, not recently, but he has talked about slavery and how, you know, uh, specifically about like, how uh, it's not about like the power of like, of holding someone else. It's more about like holding like their potential labor. And
Yeah.
so, he thought he made what he thought was like the obvious choice, but he said, um, like he said that, I would buy, like, it's like, do you think it's better to be aborted or to be bought into slavery? And because of the hypersensitivity of
Everyone.
everyone, and particularly those on the left. I mean, I don't know if it was intention to get this sort of reaction, but he got the reaction nonetheless. But people started going at him, talking about how evil he is, and like, what are you talking about? Like, like, why would you want to be, be born into slavery? It's better off to be, and like all these people making these stupid arguments about, different societies, saying that it's better to, you know, die on your feet than live on your knees, and da da da, just missing the entire point of his question is, it's like you're saying that, because the other side is saying that it is better to kill the baby than for it to be alive.
Exactly. Yeah, that's crazy.
And so, yeah, it's crazy that it was really interesting seeing like just the reaction, of all these people, who like take the because if you think about like why, I mean, he has a hot take about how like, like black people being like the least productive in our society today, um, and how it'd be better for them to, that if he were to buy those babies and then bring them up, and then them eventually you know, uh, working off the, what he had to pay to buy them. So he isn't talking about, um, like chattel slavery. He's talking about, just owning your labor essentially, like how, the economic
the
slavery,
idea of, it's more of the ancient idea of slavery,
Exactly.
where it wasn't like you're not in chains, but you are owned by someone. Your labor, it's not you who are owned, but it's your labor that's owned, and like you're essentially signing a contract to be that person's. It's a better idea of like what indentured servitude.
Yeah.
Say that indentured servitude is meant to be.
Hmm. Exactly.
But there is like at some point there's an out.
Hmm.
It's not just like some arbitrary like, well, I just own you, so get to work.
Right. Yeah, and I mean he goes into, and he of course he supports like what he's saying, like, um through different, uh sightings of like, like biblical, some like biblical stuff, and like, Islamic tradition, how like, if you have a slave, then you're to treat them, in such and such manner, and not like too harshly, and they have to have like this like same living setup as you. um, and
Yeah,
so yeah, so he's not saying that, because slavery is such an emotionally charged word that it's, you can't really use that word.
oh, sorry, I was emotionally charged there for a second.
Exactly, because there's so much emotion behind that word. It's very hard to use that in a nuanced way. Um, I know you hate that word. I know
Uh,
you hate that word. But in this context, it applies. Um, so yeah, I mean, he's come up with his own word, like builder buddy, and, so so yeah, so he would say things like, oh yeah, become my builder buddy, live on my land, eat the same food that I do, and just, work for me, and which, that's essentially, and it really, I think it's a really interesting, conversation starter, because then it goes into like what is slavery, because, kind of like, I don't know if you remember that movie, Con Air,
mm,
where, what is it? Nicolas Cage's character, is sitting next to Steve Buscemi's character, and Steve
yeah,
Buscemi's character is like this, psychotic killer, and
right,
he's
right,
like the Joker of that universe, um,
right.
and and Nicolas Cage's character is calling him, insane, and then Steve Buscemi's character, kind of calmly says like, "Oh, what's insane? That's a matter, you know, now you're just talking semantics. Because what if I told you, a guy working for 30 years at a job for shit pay, and then the company that you devoted your life to, kicking you out the door and giving you a cheap gold-plated watch, that was insane."
That is insane.
You know,
Yeah.
so it's like, yeah, so what is slavery? Is like could it not be said that, you know having, getting your kids, in, to go to school and to accrue, uh, almost unfathomable amounts of debt, and having them then work at any job that they can get after their supposed education to pay back that loan for, you know, maybe like, 20, 25 years. Wouldn't that not be slavery?
That is, well, I mean, that's essentially what it is. We're putting people into slavery
Mm-hmm.
for this, crazy system that we've created for
Mm-hmm.
ourselves. It's like you're putting people into like a debt slavery.
Exactly. I mean, what's the difference at that point?
There is no difference.
Exactly. Like,
I
yeah.
mean, we listened to that like interview with that former slave
Mm-hmm.
who he wouldn't even if he couldn't pay for it at that time, like he wouldn't buy what it is because he had been a slave for most of his life,
Mm-hmm.
and now that he's free, he does not want to go back to that lifestyle
Right. Because,
in
yeah.
any capacity.
Right. Because he understands what slavery looks like. Not just the whips and the chains and the
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 concept
cotton
of
fields, and and all that kind of stuff. He sees what slavery for what it really is.
yeah, um, that's yeah. I don't know. Like it's in the idea of like, is it better to be aborted or to be a slave? Honestly, like I'll take my chance with slave. I'd rather be alive.
Right. Exactly. I mean, exactly. I mean, that's the obvious answer. But so people are.
Because slavery doesn't last forever.
I'm sorry.
Slavery doesn't always last forever.
Exactly. Exactly. And like no one stops to, yeah, and again, no one stops to think about what slavery is, and like, and what type of slavery you're talking about. We're talking about chattel slavery. We're talking about, like, the ancient, like, economic form of slavery, where the person owns your labor, but like not you, not as a person.
Yeah, it's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and then
we don't know. To be honest, we actually have no idea. In this, we think we do, but we don't actually know how that slavery looked. Honestly, we don't know how it looked in the antebellum South,
mhm.
just because there's so much misconception as to like what was happening in the South at that time, and then two, yeah, we definitely don't know what that ancient form of slavery looked like back in, the essentially what was the biblical
Right.
times,
Well, I
with like
mean,
Rome
yeah. I mean, I
and
think we
stuff.
can understand it, but we don't know what it looks like, because
No, we don't
because
have an idea of
well,
what it
yeah,
looks like.
because scholars, they told us what slavery entailed, which is, it could be like, spoils of war type stuff, but it could also be kind of like, selling your labor to someone, and, you know
Right,
enslaving yourself that way, where, they own your labor, but that's it, and, you're basically paying off a debt by, doing, odd jobs here and there, at their house, or on their farmland, or whatever, until that debt is paid off.
right.
But yeah, it kind of reminded me of a conversation I had with someone myself about abortion, and how, they're talking about, like, oh, well, what about the children, like, what if they have to live in, like, poverty, because the mother can't afford to, like, take care of them, or whatever. It's just like, and I looked them straight in the eye, and I was like, well, I already know that you don't care about children, so what does it matter? Then what are you talking about? Of course I care about child. I'm very, I'm a compassionate person. That's why I don't want them to live in, um, in poverty. I was like,
No, you just don't want them
yeah,
to live.
exactly. I was like, it's like, no, you just don't want, yeah, that's exactly what I said to them. I was like, no, you just don't want them to live.
Yeah, it's like the same. Like the other thing too is like when a lot of people bring up is like, oh, you're well, what about in the case of like rape and incest? Like, okay, let's say this. we'll make an exception for those 2 cases. What about the rest of it? Like, what are you going to do about the rest of it? Like, when it's not those things, do you still want abortion to be around? It's like, well, okay, well then it's not about rape and incest, then, is it?
Right, exactly. I made that same appeal. It's like, oh, right, and I said, all right, bet. I'll give you those. Can we make every other instance of abortion illegal? And of course, they said no. I said, then it didn't. It did. Then the rape and incest didn't even matter to you.
Yeah. So who gives a shit?
Yeah.
This conversation is going nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
It's over.
Exactly.
Because we're not gonna meet some middle ground. Like, just get. Who cares?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
let's just talk about something else.
I was like, this conversation has no purpose whatsoever. And then I was like, and I was trying to move on, but they kept trying to labor the point. I was just like, it's over.
Well, no.
And I didn't even say that you lose, I win. I just said, like, we're never gonna come to the middle ground. So let's talk about something else. But they just kept they attempted to keep it going, but I was just like, it's like you're not gonna move from your position. I'm not gonna move from my position. My position, which I think is very based and logically sound, you won't even take a step towards. I know your position is a fallacy and is evil, so I'm not going to walk towards you. So we're at an impasse.
Yeah. The what was it? The immovable object has met the unstoppable force.
Right, yeah. Although recently I did have a discussion about abortion where I think I didn't sway the person, but I got them to think about things. Because they made the classical, they made all the classic arguments.
Of course they did.
Particularly one I think really got to him, particularly because they brought up they're not sentient, I was like, but then they kept using human like fetus or human zygote, and it's like, but you acknowledge that it's a human, right? Okay, then if you kill me right now, then is that murder? Because I'm a human. It's like, so if you kill me and I'm a human, then that's murder. Then that thing in the womb is a human, and so that should be murder too, right? And they're like, it kind of like broke their brains. Like, in a way, I guess, but then they pivoted to like the whole experience thing, and then I was like, well, even if you're in an empty room, aren't you having experiences? Like, you're experiencing the walls, you're experiencing the ceiling, you're experiencing the floor. There's a light in the room, you're experiencing the light. If the light goes out, you're experiencing the darkness within that room. So isn't a baby also experiencing things in the room? It's like, oh look, wow, look, a hand, oh, an arm, whoa, another limb down there. I mean, if it's a boy, those are, or like,
and what a limb it is.
Yeah, I wonder what that is. Like, oh wow, a third leg. Or like just hearing the muffled sound of the mother's voice, or hearing the mother's heartbeat. Isn't that all experiences?
Experience, yeah.
Yeah. So, and then it was really great because the guy that I was talking with, like, every single time, like, I would counter, and I wasn't even being aggressive. I was just like, oh, what about this? And I kind of like shifted the perspective just slightly, and then he'd always come back. The constant refrain from him to my arguments is like, that's a good point.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, I don't know, like, I'm sure, like, I didn't change his mind on the subject, but I gave him some things to think about, and and that's really all I can do. The rest he has to do on his own.
Exactly. Well, anything else you want to talk about, or should we work into our movie review? Should we get into the conversation, if you will?
Yeah. Now that we're done with that conversation, let's get into this conversation.
About the conversation from 1974.
Yeah, starring Gene Hackman, Harrison Ford, John Cazale, Cindy Williams, directed by Francis Ford Coppola, of course.
Robert Duvall is
Robert
also
Duvall
in
is
it.
also in this movie. I don't think he's credited though.
Star-studded cast. Huh?
I don't think he's.
He's uncredited in the film.
At least on Google, it's showing that.
Shit.
Doesn't.
That's crazy if he is uncredited.
Yeah, it's pretty messed up.
Well, he also may have wanted to do that because this is also coming off of. This is after Godfather. At least Godfather 1. I don't know if Godfather 2 had come out yet. So he may have just like, oh yeah, like Coppola
he was doing a solid to Francis.
I have a feeling he was if he's uncredited. Was this your first viewing of The Conversation?
Yeah. Let me just hit everyone with a synopsis.
Oh yeah, right. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Here's the synopsis for The Conversation. Surveillance expert Henry Call is hired by mysterious client's brusque aide to tail a young couple, Mark and Anne. Tracking the pair through San Francisco Union Square, Call and his associate Stan manage to record a cryptic conversation between them. Tormented by memories of a previous case that had ended badly, Call becomes obsessed with the resulting tape, trying to determine if the couple are in danger. Yes, this is my first time watching The Conversation. I didn't even know this movie existed.
Really? Oh wow! Yeah, this is one that is considered one of the great classics of the '70s, definitely. What did you think of your first viewing of it? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Were you confused? How did you feel about it?
I thought it was interesting.
It's an interesting character study.
It is, and it's a really interesting performance from Gene Hackman. It was much more subdued. It wasn't at what is it? Not that he plays.
He's not as bombastic in this one.
Yes, there it is. Bombastic. He's not as bombastic as he was like in
French
Connection or I mean, they're not parody, but like in The Replacements, where he played the football coach. Or as Captain Ramsey in Crimson Tide.
Or in The Quick and the Dead.
Quick and the Dead as God, what's his character name? As the gunslinger.
Yeah. I would say the one thing I was thinking about this film is he is one very good at his craft as a he's a surveillance expert. He's really good at it, and he's able to, and obviously people around him recognize his talent. Right. He's famous in that community. Obviously he's getting paid extremely well to do this. But this really goes back to we don't know what his previous issue was with another client, like for sure. We're kind of told about what happened, and
well, I mean,
he does.
Yeah, I mean, he was involved in in a job for another client, which led to the deaths of I guess a rival or something, but then also like the family of that rival.
Yeah. And so he feels guilty for like what his work does, yet he continues to do said work. And he struggles now in this newest iteration. He realizes that something bad is going to happen. But he's thinking it's all like the wife and the her
right, and her lover.
Her lover are like, they're probably going to be attacked by the director, and obviously the director director's assistant, played by Harrison Ford, is all kind of shady, all sorts of shady as well. So you're like, okay, so say Henry Call, he's like, I'm gonna try and in my own way try to figure out if I can find out how I can protect these guys. I'm gonna keep the tapes away from the director, and I'm gonna.
Well, initially, what is it? The tapes were ready of the conversation because, what is it? Like his surveillance team, they were able to record this conversation that this couple were having, but like from different sources. So you had one guy with like a directed microphone, and then you had another guy with a kind of broad broad array sort of listening device,
Right.
like a satellite dish. And then you had one who was like who had a close proximity microphone to try and catch, tidbits of conversation. And what he would do is splice that all together to get the best quality recording.
Yeah. Very similar to The Blowout, by the way.
I haven't seen that one, but I'll have to check it out.
Dude.
Yeah, initially, he was done and he was ready to turn in everything, but I guess his like spidey sense went off, and the direct the client's assistant said like, oh yeah, I'll take those for the director, for the and like he was gonna be paid off right then and there, but something he wasn't just something was wrong with that situation, so he's like, what, I want to hand these off to director personally. And I think that might have had something to do with that previous job where maybe he handed it off to somebody else, with with the auspices of that client's authority, but
yeah.
But not.
Do you think? Yeah. Do you think that his character has always been that paranoid? Because he's very so. Here's my thought is that I don't think that he was always a shut-in to a degree, like because he's very closed off, not just like he wants. Maybe that just comes with the want anyone to know what I'm doing or saying, and so he's kind of like shut off and protected his life from people like, or if it's because of the situation that he was in previously, he's kind of become more
guarded.
Information about I don't want you to have, don't it's stuff like that.
Right. Yeah, I don't think I wouldn't necessarily say he was paranoid. I mean, at the end, yes, but I think initially, I think he's very guarded, and I think
he became unhinged.
Yeah, but I think I think he just learned from past experience, and he knows that that his work is very powerful, and that he has the power to affect people's lives in a very direct way. So I think he understands like the power that he has, and I think like because of that, like I think he guards himself very closely, and so he doesn't share much with anybody. He's mostly like even in like initially in that scene where he first comes to his apartment, and he finds a bottle of wine that I think that the landlady got him, but she was able to bypass all his security.
That's crazy. Like how it's like, dude, like don't leave it at like my front
right or
door or something. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, or wait till like
break.
you hear me come up the steps or whatever. But then also
Yeah.
when he goes to see, I guess his I would hesitate to call her a girlfriend, but
Everything I said like that is his girlfriend, but like it's kind of like why?
right. I mean, that's why I hesitate to say,
Because he doesn't seem like.
because he doesn't like. I don't think he's terribly emotionally invested in her, but she's desperately trying to get to know him.
No.
Um, but I mean, he
Yeah.
he treats he treated her with like you know I mean little better than a stranger. I mean, the visit was
Yeah, that's
was transactional. He was there to do his thing, and then like he's like, oh, the rent's due pretty soon, and he gives her cash, and then he's out the door.
right. Yeah, and then he dips out. The so obviously him being closed off, like, because he does have a partner that's played by yeah, John Cazale's character, and John Cazale's character is like, well, you're not giving me anything, like, because he's trying to build, like, he's probably been working with this guy for a while. He's trying to build up some sort of like friendship with him, but Harry Call, Gene Hackman's character is like, you gotta shut up. I need to work. Don't talk to me. Don't. It's like, it's like, I could help you if you would show me how to help you. And obviously, like, there's this whole argument that happens, and I think his name is Stan. Is John Cazale's character? Yeah, Stan like ends up storming off. It's like, well, fuck you, man. He storms off, and essentially he quits. He's no longer working with Harry, and works for one of his, I mean, quote unquote competitors. And because then the next thing we see this spy convention essentially, and
yeah, I mean, essentially it's a trade show, but for like
yeah,
securities.
Yeah, for whatever, going back to Harry's, like, his lair, if you. And it takes him a minute to open up and like kind of be one of the guys, but he starts to do. And what really ends up happening is that like the guys were kind of fucking with him just because they were enjoying themselves and like kind of have like and just stuff like that. You think that there was more nefarious going on with the guy who put the pen recorder in his pocket, because Harry is pissed. Yeah, well, I mean,
right. It's like some personal boundary was transgressed. Even, which is kind of ironic, for the kind of work that he does.
like, because I kind of feel like he was humiliated in a sense. It's like, well, fuck, this 2-bit has been, or this, the guy who never was, got the best of me. Or it could have been like where it's like he was starting to feel like, okay, maybe these are people I can was it Bernie? Yeah, Bernie. Bernie was there not because he was like trying to hang out with Harry. It was to get to his secrets.
I got that too.
Yeah, because he was a stormy piece of shit. I don't think. Yeah, I think that was his motive from the very start, because he kept asking like, Harry, we should be partners, man. Like, it's like, you got all this great tech, and I got all these great connections, so we'll make a fucking fortune, man. It's like, and Harry's just like, can you we're having a party. Shut up. Just like, and he would not let it go.
Yeah.
And which leads me to think that like he was there he put that pen hoping that there was Harry would never notice it, and he would kind of start talking about stuff to himself so that this guy could get his secrets, which is terrible.
Or alternatively, he wanted to show him what he could bring as a partner.
That's all. That was the other thing I was debating with. Showing friendship in a haphazard way, or is he nefarious and trying to get at like what Harry? That prostitute that he brought along, was she part because she stole the tape, or was she hired by the director's assistant, or was she hired by the director's assistant?
Right. I think she. Yeah. I think not for Bernie, but for the director.
Yeah, I think that could also be likely. That's another interesting like theory too. Like, that's what I said. Like, it could go
like it because unless the director's assistant hired Bernie, and then Bernie hired the prostitute to seduce them. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
either way, and like I would almost want to watch it another few times just to see like, is there anything here that I can glean from that, because it's not given to us.
Mm-hmm.
What is your? Oh, he ends up going to that hotel that the couple that we see in the beginning that he's recording,
right,
that they're talking about, and he's trying to get their room, but it's occupied obviously, and then he gets the adjoining room and he's doing surveillance, he's trying to see if like he can hear what's going on, and here's where I think that like it's hallucination territory. Is he sees like the bloodied hands from like the balcony, and I mean obviously he hears them like shouting, and then like he hears, like we don't hear anything after that, we just see like the bloodied handprints, and he goes into a fucking spiral, and he's in his pillow fort watching the Flintstones, as one does. And then like obviously he ends up breaking into the room,
as one does,
and discovers it's completely clean except for the toilet maybe, although it's speculated that that's just a hallucination that he had. And then it turns out that the whole thing was essentially a ruse against the director, because it was the wife that was, and I think that, to be honest, if, in my personal opinion, I think that fucked him up too, because he had spent.
Right, it was the wife who was setting up the husband to be murdered. Right.
The entirety of this movie trying to protect this couple who were the evil people, and he feels like everything, no matter what movie he makes, he's working for evil, and especially with his Catholic background too, he's always at a crossroads. And and he shares recording of like what he has. You know what he didn't check is the fucking saxophone.
That's true. Yeah, he tore up his entire apartment but he didn't like look into the sacks, to see if there was a recording device.
Yeah, he didn't go into this.
Rookie
Yeah,
mistake.
here's the thing though, like as great as Harry is at what he does, he makes a lot of errors, like errors in judgment, and he is almost too trusting of people, and he kind of gets himself in these weird positions.
Mhm.
I don't know, like it's a crazy movie. You're looking for something that's like this fast-paced spy thriller kind of thing. This is not the movie for you. This is a very deliberately paced. You're delving into Harry Call's mind, and you're trying to figure things out.
Yeah. Mm.
And like I said, it's a slower pace.
Right. It's
But
always the
man,
women's
if you
fault.
don't care
It's
about
always the
that,
women's
you're gonna
fault.
have a great time
That's
watching
the real
this.
lesson of the movie. It's always women's fault.
And what did we learn from this? The woman was evil. She was the bad guy. What do you think of the conversation? Did you end up like liking it? Did you not like it? Did you where do you feel
I
about
liked
the
it
movie?
okay.
Because this is your first time. I'm curious of what you're thinking.
I liked it okay.
You liked it okay? Was it a film? Is this a film that you will be
Probably
coming back
not.
to anytime soon?
Not, probably not.
Probably not.
Yeah, I think there's just, I think, I just don't think there was enough setup, uh, uh, for like some of the eventual payoffs, like, Harry like having like the delusion of like seeing the bloody hands or whatever, and then like kind of like I know like it's like implied that he's not quite all there, like maybe like he might be on the spectrum, so he misses like a few like social cues, um, but then they also add in a like a religious element to him where it's like he doesn't like people saying God damn, and he goes to confession, but it kind of is this it's like a little bit of
Yeah.
a mismatch of different things to make him seem like just slightly off, but like there's no real payoff. Or at least like proper setup.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Like I could see like that would when I was thinking, it's like Andy might have a problem with that because yeah, there is kind of we're not given quite enough information about this guy, and yeah, the payoff maybe doesn't quite work out. Like I still think it's a very interesting movie. There's enough there that I it gives it
Right. I
some
mean, yeah,
watchability in
I'm not
my
your
eyes,
wife, all right.
but
I can handle
I
the
can see
slow
like
pace.
where you're coming from,
Um,
and it's
and
maybe
the
it's just
fact that
not
it's from the
quite
'70s.
worth it. And it's it's a slow paced '70s film too. Yeah, that it's not a
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. I
Now,
just don't think it was.
yeah, next week's movie
It wasn't.
she likes. She's seen it. She likes it. But it's yeah, this is not a film that she would like at all.
The proper amount of setup and also not enough development of the character because like if again small things like if Harry took pills and then we eventually learn that it's, like antipsychotics, or something to make him, like, and that might explain why, you know he seems like he, has a touch of the tism, because that the pills might, like, dull his senses a bit, and then
Right.
also, like, explain, like, why he's, and then maybe, like, have him, like, have a, like, a hallucination or two, like a small ones, like a cup or a bottle not
Right.
being in the place where he thought it was, or there at all, so, like, maybe he was, like, trying to pour himself, like, a glass of wine, but the glass isn't actually there.
Oh,
you
yeah,
know
that would be
or, like,
interesting.
or, like, have him, like, talk in his sleep, like, maybe, like, because he's, like, so into his work that, like, that he starts, like, kind of, like, having bad dreams, and he's like,
Well,
well,
he did.
yeah,
He
again,
does
to the
have a bad
credit,
dream.
there is that one bad dream that he has where he tries to, like, trying to warn Cindy Williams' character, but I wish there was one where, like, he was working and he'd fall asleep, and, like, he kind of, but then, like, the dream kind of gets mixed up to, like, his his guilt,
It's
his
merging with
guilt, right,
reality.
his guilt, but then linked to his work, but then also, like, the guilt he has of, like, that previous instance,
Right. Right. Okay.
and then, like, it could be, like, where he could have, like, an emotional outburst at Stan, like, Stan's trying to wake him up, and, like, he, like, kind of goes for his throat, and, like, it's like, oh, like, hey, it's me, it's Stan, like, calm down,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
little small character moments like that, or little small, like, like, you know, uh, lantern hanging, I think would have helped a bit.
Well, with that said, how would you rate it, Andy?
I'm gonna give this a solid 3, but with the potential of a 3.5.
Okay. I think I'm gonna go. Oh, I'm gonna give this a 4.
Okay.
Well, one, I am gonna buy this film at some point here. I got it on my.
Of course you do.
I there's just I don't know. There's something about this film that I do like. It's flawed. It has its flaws. Um, but man, this is a very different Gene Hackman
Yeah, I mean, if
performance.
if there's anything to be
I
applauded
think
in this movie, for me, would be Gene Hackman's performance.
and I think that's honestly he's probably giving a reason why I give it that boost is he's so good in this film.
And I think that
And
half
like I said, I think
point for me is because of Gene Hackman's performance.
yeah, I'm giving it a full star
Mm.
because of Gene. Because otherwise, yeah, it would be a 3. Like it's intriguing, it's interesting, but it doesn't. I don't think it does fully hit the mark. But man, Gene Hackman hits the mark because he's really good in this, and it's an unusual performance for him because he's usually kind of like this,
Yeah,
like
he's like a really big,
bomb,
over the top kind of character. Or
which I like that version of Gene Hackman, and that's what most people know him for. But this is something way out of left field for him.
Exactly.
So I like it.
All right. I mean, if there's nothing left to add.
No, I got nothing else to
All
say.
right. Well, there you have it, folks. That's our review for The Conversation from 1974. I give it. I'm gonna commit. I'm gonna give it 3.5.
Okay, you are
I'm gonna
gonna
go three
go
and a
three and a
half.
half after
And
all.
Rob gives it a 4. It's a good movie. I mean, I know I kind of poo-pooed it, just little nitpicky things, but it's a really interesting, like Rob said, it's a really interesting movie. I think it's a really interesting character study. I think that on my part, I think there could have been a little bit more to help flesh out the Gene Hackman's character, but uh, regardless, I think that Gene Hackman puts in a really good performance. That does stand up to scrutiny.
Yeah, get the Criterion Blu-ray. You'll get some more information about the film.
So yeah, but if you're a fan of the spy thriller mystery sort of movie, then I think this is right up your alley.
Is something very different in that
Yeah.
genre.
All right, folks, that brings us to the end of our stream for tonight. I hope you had a good time. I had a good time. I know Rob always has a good time.
Yes, it was. I'm coming off a very long workday. I'm tired, but man, this is good to talk about our topics and our movie today.
If you enjoyed the stream tonight, don't forget to check out the library of other content that we have. Episodes of Circle of Jerks main podcast. Old episodes of Nocturnal Transmissions, of course, where you can watch other movie reviews, as well as Rob's gaming show, Up by Uptown. Don't forget to follow us on our various social media accounts, Twitter and Letterboxd at PodcastCOJ, and Instagram at Circle of Jerks Podcast. We thank you for joining us. Come back next week, and we'll do it all over again. Have a good night.